Eastern time before I tell them. If you want a T-shirt, they range from $12 to $26. The Pancake Pantry. I walk the line is a phrase. The workers are just getting in. Right, workers? You're happy? You're well paid? Everyone happy? Everyone happy back there? I got them in an hour and a half early just for you people.
Hey, Brian.
And the Pancake Pantry is nestled between Vanderbilt and Belmont University. And this is their hot sauce. There you go. Which is half done, which is a good sign.
What do they taste it for?
What is their specialty? What is their breakfast specialty?
Hey guys, if you had a specialty, what would your specialty be? What are people known for? What do you know?
So, sweet potato pancakes.
Sweet potato pancakes.
Ooh, that sounds good. Right, you got
cinnamon cream syrup.
Yum.
Okay, sweet
Brian,
potatoes
order one
aren't
right
just
now.
for Thanksgiving anymore.
Order one right now so you can have one in a half an hour. That's it?
There it is.
Hey guys, do you have any? Can I have a sweet potato pancake? And you have a half hour to make it. Steve's giving you 30 minutes. Short order cooks need 30 minutes. That's like a vacation. But no, this is a fantastic little town. As you know, that you guys stuck me in a place that is one of the fastest growing cities in all of America. 100 people move here a day, many of which come here. Mostly small business owners I talk to, and I've been here for 3 or 4 days with my family. I was here Friday and Saturday. Everyone's booming. And they just feel as though the economy is affecting them down in Washington. And the president will be speaking at 4 o'clock today. And he's going to be going for the first president in 25 years to address the Farmers Bureau. 7,000 people will show up, and they're going to be talking about what they want from the president and what he's already given them, and how, as you guys just said, and Pete, you just mentioned, they helped put the president in office probably more than any other group of the country. They believe in him. So the billionaire won over the working man and the working women. And that's going to be the theme today.
Right.
And the state of Tennessee went for Trump 60 to 40. Brian, we're going to be checking in with you a little later on to try that sweet potato pancake.
No, it's just me that's going to be trying it because it doesn't travel well. So you're going to have to go with me on
That's
this.
right.
Brian, did you hear any live music over the weekend?
Did I hear any live music?
Yeah.
You're in
John
Nashville.
Rich invited me to his beautiful house to celebrate his birthday and his whiskey. He came up with whiskey. We should be working on our own liquor. I don't know, some type of cognac. Who knows? But he came up with his own whiskey, and guess what? Part of the proceeds for this whiskey go to Folds of Honor.
Oh, really?
So I felt like it was a Seinfeld episode where everybody I knew was in the same area. Redneck, I believe it's Redneck whiskey, and by the way, he's opening up another place in.
I love it.
And by the way, he's opening up another place right on Broadway in Nashville. The guy's an entrepreneur, he's a genius, and he's really good at music.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go. Well,
Brian,
in the Music City.
Redneck Riviera whiskey is what Gavin's telling us.
Correction.
The name of it is.
That works.
All right, Brian.
Yeah, Redneck Riviera, because Gavin knows whiskey, because as we know, it's usually
No,
on his
he knows
breath
how
when
to
he comes
use
to work
Google.
in the morning.
There you go. All right.
Thanks,
Brian, we'll be
Brian.
checking in with you in a little bit.
Okay.
All right. After the president flies out of Nashville, he's going to be going to the college championship
to the
tonight.
big game.
Alabama versus Georgia. And we understand that apparently they're trying to work out something where the president of the United States tries to go down to the field for the national anthem.
Wow.
Now, there won't actually be any players kneeling because the players will be in the locker room for the anthem, but they're trying to work it out. If the president is not on the field, apparently he will be highlighted in some fashion.
Can you imagine that crowd is going to go crazy? I mean, this is Alabama and Georgia. They're playing in Atlanta. If the president of the United States comes out there, I have a feeling he's going to get a great reaction. They love him.
Exactly. Contrast the fans there that love him with the folks in the swamp who still surround him. And a book.
Plenty of them.
There's a book. I don't know if you know there's a book. There's a book that came out talking about Fire and Fury, about this president. It turns out a lot of anonymous sources, a lot of gossip, a lot of innuendo. But we went and rolled yesterday on the Sunday shows. A lot of people who actually work for the president came out and said, well, we work for him and we have a very different view of how he operates. Take a listen.
My personal experience, I was with the president yesterday at Camp David. I'm with him almost every day. The president is engaged. He understands the complexity. He asks really difficult questions of our team at CIA so that we can provide him the information that he needs to make good informed policy decisions.
I work with the president and speak with him multiple times a week. This is a man, he didn't become the president by accident. Was he unstable when he passed the tax reform? Was he unstable when we finally hit back at Syria and said no more chemical weapons? Was he unstable when we finally put North Korea on notice?
He's different than any other politician. I can tell you he's got the wherewithal to do things that no politician's been able to do, and in a good way.
Okay, so that's what some people who work with the president all the time in Washington, that's how they describe him. Meanwhile, you click over to some other channels, and some people on this channel as well have been critical of the president and his mental stability. Watch this.
He not only amplifies the coverage of this, but he also amplifies the questions that the book raises.
We could look back a year from now and say the warning signs were there and we did not do enough.
When you hear him put out that tweet, stable genius, it's kind of like Richard Nixon, I'm not a crook. It raises serious questions about his mental capacity, his ability to process information, his impulse control.
If this book is to be believed, and I think it is credible, then it is actually quite frightening for the American people.
He is like a child. I think we've probably all written this 500 times.
It's such a predictable script. It's the former Clinton operative. It's the liberal and Joy Reid. It's the never Trumper and David Brooks, all of which have loathed this president from the beginning, all of which have gone from Russian collusion to obstruction, now to mental stability, diagnosing him, his ability to process. Can he? Oh, the guy's never achieved anything in his life, right? Never processed anything, never made anything happen. It's unbelievable.
Well, President was at Camp David yesterday, and he came out and he said, you know, they did the same thing to Ronald Reagan, and then Senator Tom Cotton said they've done this, the liberal media has done this to only Republicans. Listen.
The media made similar claims about Ronald Reagan and George Bush. What they all have in common is they're Republican presidents. And when I've worked with the president and the people around him and Republican senators, he's been an active, engaged, and effective leader.
Now, one of the main sources for this particular book was Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon came out with a statement yesterday. Some people have described it as an apology. It wasn't really an apology so much as a clarification. And what he did say was he regretted the timing because he said he didn't come out to clarify the comments regarding Don Jr. soon enough. He said Don Jr. is a patriot and a good man. He said the comments about the meeting with the Russians were aimed at Paul Manafort. He said there was no Russian collusion, and he regretted calling Don Jr. unpatriotic. But at the same time, he did not specifically apologize. I was reading online, one commenter said he essentially was trying to put a Band-Aid over a knife wound in the back of the president.
Yeah.
Well, last night, Golden Globe Awards, Seth Meyers was hosting it, and he comes out and he says, you know, back in 2011 at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, I was saying that President Trump was unqualified. Here we are. Now he is the president. So he looks at Oprah and he says, Oprah, you will never be president. You do not have what it takes. Hoping, I guess, that she gets elected.
Psychology.
Exactly. So NBC tweets this out. Nothing but respect for our future president. Hashtag Golden Globes.
Now,
our president.
Now, what's interesting is that was at 8:07 p.m. Eastern.
Before
that was
she got the award.
Right. It was during Seth Meyers' his opening monologue. So clearly, it was the first time she was seen in a cutaway. But right after that, then suddenly Esquire says the same thing. W Magazine, Fox 4, Kansas City said, seriously, can't Oprah be our president? And what's interesting is she has said, and said last night, apparently she has no plans to run for president, but then the LA Times talked to her longtime companion, Stedman Graham, and he said that if the people wanted her, she would run.
She would do it.
So I'm told by the experts that there is some sort of a difference between NBC, NBC News, and MSNBC. Right. But if you look at all that, there sure doesn't look like there's one. If NBC is tweeting out our president about Oprah, could you imagine them doing that about any Republican ever? Steve, please.
No, they wouldn't.
No? Okay.
No.
All right. Well, we're
all right, so Joe Biden in 2020 for the Democratic ticket or Oprah? What do you think? Let us know what you think, please. Friends at foxnews.com.
That's right. NBC didn't say what year she would be our future president, did they?
No, they didn't.
Just our future president. All right. Meanwhile, it's 7:11 here in New York City, and it's time for a Fox News Alert.
That's right. Good morning, guys. We are following some breaking news, so let's get right to that. A sheriff's deputy in Washington state killed while responding to a suspected home invasion. The Pierce County Sheriff's Office says he was shot by a man during a foot chase in Frederickson. That's about 40 miles south of Seattle. One suspect on the loose at this hour and is considered armed and dangerous. The sheriff with an emotional call to end the violence against police.
This is something that happens too often nationally. This is something that is wrong. This is something that attacks our civic fabric. They put themselves at risk for everybody else, and too often they are harmed in the process.
Another suspect was found dead. No word yet on how he died. We will keep you updated. With lawmakers returning to work on Capitol Hill, President Trump now ready to tackle one of the key issues he has long promised to fix.
Nation of China is responsible for almost half of America's trade deficit.
Politico reporting that the commander-in-chief will likely lay out his vision to fix U.S. trade with China, which could include imposing new sanctions. But a White House official telling Fox News just moments ago that it's premature to discuss any penalties. Trump has long accused the nation of unfair practices, recently suggesting China illegally sold oil to North Korea. Well, excitement for President Trump's fake news awards is so off the charts that, guess what, we have to wait another week to find out who won.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen. It's fake news. Fake news. Fake news.
President Trump announcing the delay on Twitter, writing, quote, "The fake news awards, those going to the most corrupt and biased of the mainstream media, will be presented to the losers on Wednesday, January 17th, rather than this coming Monday. The interest in and importance of these awards is far greater than anyone could have anticipated." Guys,
I think what happened is after the book, now he's got to find a place for the author. Is the author top? I don't think the author was probably on the list when he originally came up with it.
Will there be a trophy? Yeah, will there be will the
loser trophy?
Will the losers be there to receive their awards? Wow.
Can you imagine if he did it in front of the White House press pool?
I hope he does.
All right, so postponing that until next Wednesday, of course, we'll be covering it. All right, the media refuses to talk about the president's accomplishments. They are too busy obsessing over that book. So what do Republicans need to do to get their message out? Matt Schlapp is here to discuss that coming up next.
And this pro-golfer tries to pull off a trick shot using her caddy. Next.
Ow.
Hold on.
What?
That's such a bad idea.
Fundamentally, the core kernel of this story is questioning Donald Trump's fitness to hold the office.
As personal as you want to make this and say, oh, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and all the rest, it's like, I think actually just emboldened him. And my interactions with him, he doesn't repeat these stories. He totally gets the policy.
That is Matt Schlapp right there. Despite attempts by conservatives like him to focus on the president's victories, the media can't stop using the new book to attack the president.
So what do Republicans need to do to get their message out? Matt Schlapp joins us now. He's the chairman of the American Conservative Union and former deputy assistant and political director for George W. Bush. Thank you, Matt, for being with us. Good to see you.
Great to be with you guys. Morning.
So how did this happen? How did you have Steve Bannon, that was in the White House, come out, meet with this reporter? Now he's saying he regrets it, trying to clarify what he meant by all these comments. How did this happen?
Yeah, you know, people talk about chaos in the White House, and we all have to admit there had to be a certain amount of chaos at the beginning of this administration, or they wouldn't have let somebody like this little Weasley journalist in. I mean, he's not going to have the president's best interest. I'd be okay with it if he was going to at least write a fair and balanced account, but this is just nothing but a polemic to try to harm the Trump presidency. So I give Steve Bannon credit for reiterating that these statements in the book do not accurately characterize his views of Don Jr. and the president and the question of collusion. So good for Steve for doing that. But I think they all deserve the president's scorn at the fact that they ever corroborated with this guy.
Well, you know, and he feels bad about it, according to the clarification he sent out. But in the meantime, while everybody is focusing on this, and I'm talking about the mainstream media, we're talking a lot about it as well, nobody's really talking about how this past week was the first week of the Trump tax cuts, and suddenly Americans have more money in their pocket because less withholdings being taken out.
Yeah, you know, politics is about offense and defense. You got to aggressively be on defense when people attack you. But you're right, Steve. We got to get on offense. Those of us who support the president's agenda and talk about here. Let me bring up something that's really interesting. You know, in probably the last 20 years, we haven't had a year like we had in 2017. Republicans have been trying to get drilling in Anwar for a generation. Think about that. That's pretty amazing. We've been spending a decade trying to repeal Obamacare, and we just ripped the guts out of Obamacare, and we actually dramatically changed the corporate tax structure on taxes for the first time, even before Ronald Reagan was president. I mean, this is pretty amazing stuff, and we have to keep talking about it. And the American people, when they see it hit their paychecks and when they see it affect their lives, they're going to be excited about it.
All right, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, Congressman Brian Mast knows what it's like to fight for our country. He lost both of his legs in Afghanistan, and he's talking about, or he's trying to make history for his fellow veterans. He's going to join us live next. Here's some quick headlines for you. UN Ambassador Nikki Haley standing firm behind President Trump's call to disarm North Korea's growing nuclear program.
There is no turnaround. What he has basically said is, yes, there could be a time where we talk to North Korea, but a lot of things have to happen before that actually takes place. They have to stop testing. They have to be willing to talk about banning their nuclear weapons. Those things have to happen.
This as delegations from North and South Korea plan to hold formal talks tomorrow. And as the Iranian regime cracks down on protesters, it's banning teaching English in elementary schools now. Officials say learning the language too early would trigger Western cultural invasion. The demonstrators are upset over the Iranian economy. At least 22 people there have died. Pete?
We could use a little Western cultural invasion in our own country. But I digress. They said it couldn't be done, but after a full year of bureaucratic red tape, the country's first congressional office inside a VA facility officially opens for business. Occupying that new office is our next guest, GOP Congressman and U.S. Army veteran Brian Mast. He lost both legs in an IED blast while deployed in Afghanistan and joins us now. Congressman, thanks for being here. It's a great idea. You know, so many guys and gals who try to access the VA end up going to their congressman. You end up working on those things. You're saying, let's marry the two. Let's put our congressional office inside the VA. Where did this idea come from, and how long did it take to make it happen?
Well, like you mentioned, this has been a year in the making. This idea came to fruition because this is the biggest stack of casework that I get, is veterans and people that are providing services in the VA coming to my office saying that there's an issue. And the second biggest stack of casework that we get is those coming to our office saying, hey, these are all the positive things that are going on in the VA. And we want to be witness to that. I want to see all of the positive things that are going on there so that I can make sure that they're replicated. And I want to see all the negative things that are going on there immediately, so that we can light a fire under somebody's butt to make sure that it never happens again and make sure that the problem is fixed right away. That's the goal of this.
You're going to be in there on many Mondays. You yourself will be in that office. Did the VA resist this? Were they open to this idea at the West Palm Beach facility?
Well, like I said, this has been a year in the making, so there's been a lot of different hurdles to go through. When I first brought this up to Secretary of the VA Shulkin, he was very receptive to it. He started working with me on this immediately. It's just taken a lot of other things to go through, not just with the House of Representatives, but also with the VA. But we got it to fruition. This is going to be a better path forward to advocate for all of our veterans there. You know, when you look at what goes on in the VA, the tens of thousands of veterans that are there that have to get transportation just to go to the VA facility. And when they get there, they have to be pushed around in a wheelchair, or they need somebody there to assist them. To give them a one-stop shop where they can see their representative, where they can know that they're being advocated, you know, for, that's an important thing. They know when they see us there, hopefully they get to see all 435 representatives in VAs across the country. Well, they're going to know that they're not forgotten.
Brian, I love that. It's a testament to what you went to Washington to go do. It's also, unfortunately, a sad testament to how many problems still exist at the VA, but the fact that you're fighting for it is huge. But as a warfighter, I have to ask you a question on some of the news of the day about North Korea. There's been a lot of talk about the president's rhetoric. Has his rhetoric around North Korea been helpful or harmful in denuclearizing that dangerous country?
I think it's helpful in this respect. North Korea knows that they're on the president's agenda, and the whole world knows that the president doesn't make empty promises. It's something that's been proven both with domestic policy and with foreign policy, and I think it's speaking directly to the heart of the leaders that are in North Korea to know that if there's going to be a red line, it's not going to be allowed to be crossed.
Good stuff. Brian Mast, you know, you live in the South. You've got to be either for Alabama or Georgia. Are you making a call for tonight?
You know, I stick with our Florida teams, so I'm going to be supporting and cheering for whoever comes away as the victor and congratulating them. But you know, it's always painful for me to not see one of my own teams there.
You're right. No Gators, no Seminoles. Sorry about that. All right, brother. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Take care, my friend.
All right. When you think of colleges these days, you think of snowflakes and safe spaces as well as protests. Well, Alan Dershowitz says that's because we're miseducating an entire generation. So how do we fix it? It's an important question. He joins us live on set next.
We are miseducating a whole generation of future leaders on our college campuses today. We're teaching them intolerance. We're encouraging shutting down dissenting views. I am terrified, not about the present, I am terrified about 20 or 30 years from now when these young people who have been taught not to tolerate diverse views become our leaders.
Did you watch that show last night on Fox called The Wise Guys? Excellent. It was shot in Las Vegas with, among others, Dr. Alan Dershowitz. You know him, a law school professor, Harvard guy, lifelong Democrat, author of the book Trumped Up. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How do we get to this place where college campuses are now just doing what?
Well, first, we need to encourage dissent on college campuses. You know, when I was a kid, they tried to censor us. That was Joe McCarthy. That was the right. Today, it's the hard left that tries to censor the center, conservatives, people who espouse religious values, and there aren't enough college professors who stand up for the right of dissent. The students are doing it. They're doing a great job, but they're not getting the support of the faculty. They're not getting the support of administrators.
So how do you fix this? Intolerance 101.
Well, first of all, you fight back. You never, ever allow the bullies, and that's what these are. These are bullies, some of the student groups and some of the faculty groups. They try to shut you down. They scream and yell when you speak. They protest when you come on campus. Look, I'm a centrist liberal. Every time I speak on a campus, there are protests. There are efforts. Shut him down. Don't let him speak.
But these students worry about retaliation, and so do some of the professors. If you go against what the school is preaching, you could get fired. You could get an F on as a grade.
Well, it's not so much what the school is preaching. It's what some hard left professors are preaching. They're a minority, but they are the loudest minority. And remember, it's these radical lefties that can shut the school down. That's why they're so frightened of them.
Are they really the minority, though? Even when I was in college at Princeton, 34 of the 35 history professors were registered Democrats or left of center. It's been this way, but it's gotten even more extreme. And now those graduate students, as you pointed out, baptized in hard left, are now the professors. How do you change, to her question, how do you actually go in and change this complex?
Well, first of all, the fact that there are many Democrats, I agree with that. If we want real diversity, we have to diversify the student body, diversify the faculty, not only on the grounds of race and gender, but on the grounds of ideology as well. But, the liberal Democrat, like me, is the subject. They hate me more than they hate conservatives because we're the ones who might be able to influence the students, and we're the ones who they want to shut down. Yeah. And that kind of intolerance is just not accepted. And I'll tell you, it's the administrators that don't have the courage to stand up to these students because they know these students could make their lives miserable.
Well, it would be hard to have a litmus test where you've got to, okay, we're going to hire a certain number of Democrats.
But there's a hidden litmus test.
Absolutely, but everybody should be for the freedom of speech, ultimately.
Absolutely. And you get now professors who are writing articles against freedom of speech. There's a professor at NYU. There's a number of professors who are now saying, what's the big deal about freedom of speech? We know the truth, capital T, capital T. Why do we need dissenting views?
We're going to might do an interview next month with Robbie George at Princeton. There are some examples of places where there is a beachhead for conservatives who are simply saying there's another view.
And liberals and conservatives have to get together on this because it's liberals and conservatives together who are being silenced by the extremes on the left, and there are some extremes on the right. The people at Charlottesville obviously didn't want to hear dissenting views, and I think it's the responsibility of liberals like me to take on the radical left. It's the responsibility of conservatives to take on the radical right, and the conservatives are doing a better job.
Guys at Charlottesville didn't have tenure, though.
No.
Now, the liberal left, mainstream media, they're running with this narrative now that the president is not mentally fit to be in the White House. Is there some damage there?
It's very dangerous. I've railed against the criminalization of political difference. It's getting worse. The psychiatrization of political differences is much more dangerous. It's what they did in Russia. It's what they did in China. It's what they did in apartheid South Africa. If you don't like a candidate, first lock them up. If you can't lock them up, commit him to a mental hospital. There's a professor at Yale named Brandy Lee who has been leading the campaign, saying the president's dangerous. He has access to the nuclear trigger. We may even have to confine him against his will under a kind of commitment law. Imagine how dangerous that would be. And, you know, psychiatrists are notoriously bad at predicting violence.
When he's not even their patient.
And remember that what they're looking at are things they knew about before he was elected president. Look, I didn't like what I saw necessarily, so I did what you do in a democracy. You vote for the candidate you prefer. I preferred Hillary Clinton. I knew about her. I knew about him. I made a balanced judgment. But you don't lock them up. You don't put them in mental hospitals if you don't agree with them. That's so dangerous to democracy.
Helen, so many people on the left, they're looking at the Michael Wolff book and they're talking about how apparently some aides in the West Wing have whispered about, you know, we really should consider the 25th Amendment because the boss, not good upstairs. Explain the 25th Amendment.
25th Amendment is designed